There's a big difference between a stream that looks like this than one that looks and sounds like this. So, if you're wanting to make professional looking live streams, then this video is for you. So let's start with the list of kit you're going to need to be able to pull off a look like this. The first thing you're going to need is a DSLR. The DSLR needs a clean HDMI output, unlimited runtime and audio inputs, ideally one with autofocus. Now, we'd recommend the Sony A series. What you can currently see is the Sony A7, but most of the streams are going to be built around this, the A6500. Now, there are plenty of other cameras in the A range, going from the A3000, A4000, A5000, and now the A6000 that you can use. You can currently also get these things at great rates, used or new, online. So these cameras come with autofocus, which if you're filming yourself like I am a lot of the time, is very helpful, but you don't have to have it. One of the arguments against autofocus is it drains too much battery. So don't worry if you don't have it, because, well, your camera will last longer. By the way, a clean HDMI output means that the data that you can see on your camera screen won't show in your stream. So when you look at your camera, you can see the ISO settings, the battery power, and other information on the screen. If you don't have a clean output, this will actually go in your stream and it will look awful. So you need to find a way of either turning this off or having a clean output. The Sony A range does have this feature. Unlimited runtime means the camera basically won't just turn itself off. A lot of DSLRs have a built-in system so that they save battery, and after half an hour they'll turn themselves off. You don't want this to happen. You're also going to need what's known as a Camlink. This is a box that converts your camera's HDMI outputs to a USB your computer can read. Now, this might be your third video you're watching or your fourth on live streaming where you're trying to get away with not having to buy this overpriced bit of plastic. I looked for ages and I cannot find another way of doing this without it that isn't a complete and utter nightmare. So if you're doing live streams yourself, you don't want to be wasting your time. You don't want that extra headache before you go on camera because it's stressful enough as it is. So just bite the bullet and buy the thing. There's a link in the description. So you need to go on Elgato, the manufacturer of the Camlink's website, to see if the camera you have or going to buy is compatible with it. There is a problem though. The A6500 is not on their list, yet it does still work. So if you're like me and you don't have to buy a whole new camera, maybe buy it and see if it does work on your existing camera, or do a little bit of research online. Forums like Reddit and actually YouTube will tell you if you can get a result of it. The next thing you might need is a dummy battery. This is basically exactly what it sounds like. It's just a bit of plastic that goes in the battery hole and it connects to the mains, and then you can run your camera off the mains. Again, the A6500 you're supposed to do this with, but I've had no issues just plugging a micro USB in and charging it off the mains. It might not be the best solution, and everywhere I look recommends a dummy battery just for safety purposes, but I've had no overheating issues or shutdowns so far. You'll then need a micro HDMI to regulate HDMI lead. Check your camera to make sure that it has an HDMI output, and I'm pretty sure it'll be a micro. If it isn't, I don't know what camera you've bought, I bet it's huge. Now, if you've got a modern computer and they've got rid of the USBs like the MacBook range, then, well, you're gonna have to buy an adapter that goes from USB to USB-C. And then of course, you'll need a computer. Now, if your computer's pretty old, it may struggle with live streaming. Power gets used in a lot of senses of the word. It's not just RAM that gets used, it's actual electricity too. We'll go on to that in a minute. Now, the MacBook Pro that I'm streaming from is quite an old one. It's a 2017. It was the bottom of the range. I was a bit skanky and didn't want to spend any more. And it's got a 2.3 gigahertz processor and 8 megabytes of RAM. And you know what? It works absolutely fine. So next up is lights. These are incredibly important, and you want to try and use them in the same way that you would shooting regular videos to make sure that you pop from your background. 3-point lighting is advised, but really the most important thing is to make sure that you stick out from the background if you haven't got lights available to you. But seeing as this is the pro version of the video, then you flip and buy them, all right? The next thing on the list is the mic. The mic we're currently using is the Rode Video Wireless. Now, it's pretty simple. This is also a microphone here. So if you don't have a lav mic that goes into the top, you can use the top as a microphone. I tend to find it's got a little bit too much gain. Doesn't quite sound as good as if you've got a decent lav mic. And then that then goes and sits on top of the camera. We recommend this for a lot of people. For its price point, it's incredibly good value. For most creators out there, it's very good and it's very versatile and portable. The good news is the next thing here is free and it's called OBS. You might see it a lot on YouTube and recommend it in other places. It's because it's so flipping good, and yeah, it's free. This will allow you to stream your camera's video to YouTube. And finally, one that may seem very obvious, you're gonna need the internet. Now, the reason I've put this in here is because when you're doing a stream, it's not about your download speed, it's all about your upload speed. So if you're on regular broadband, you might be really pleased with the download speeds you're getting, but actually you tend to find those upload speeds just aren't that great. So I stream from a fibre optic line. I tend to find that my upload speeds are around 15 to 20, whereas if it's less than 5, you might start to struggle. So a quick way to find out what you've got, just go on Google, type in internet speed test, and then press start the speed test, and this will give you the speeds that you're working with. There's one more thing to note: if you are streaming at prime time, which may be at 5 to sort of 9 in the evening, when a lot of people are using the internet, again, your internet might get slowed down. And if you are doing a live stream, do not upload or download anything at the same time, because it could impact your quality. So that's the list. Sorry that was so long, but there's actually quite a lot of kit that you need to do this to make it look good. And if you sacrifice one item, you'll probably find the whole quality of the stream just drops. So now we move on to the actual process. This is all about testing and finding a solution that works for you, so that when you go live, you can keep going live using the same settings that maintain a high quality, but also don't lag. People won't tolerate lag. They'll tolerate a drop from 1080p to 720p, especially if people are watching it on phones. They'll barely even notice it. But if someone's moving like this, they're gonna switch off pretty quick. Didn't know I could do the robot, did you? So I spent about 3 to 4 hours one day playing with all these settings, and I'm going to run you through them now. And what we're going to do is try and take you to the optimum setting that will stream in 1080p. And if that doesn't work and has lag, you can then go and change the settings. So let's dive in. First thing you need to do is download OBS. There is a link below for it. Follow the download instructions. It should be pretty simple. Once you've done this, you need to connect your camera and your mic up. If you're using the Rode wireless, just go and pop it on top of your camera and then clip on the mic. Then connect your HDMI to your camera and then the Camlink into your computer. Now you need to make sure that OBS and your camera talk to each other. Open it up and add a new source. You do that by clicking this plus sign. The option you want right now is video capture device. Click this, name it, and then select the drop down, and you should hopefully see Camlink 4K appear. If you don't see this, turn the camera off, the computer off, disconnect everything, reconnect it all, and make sure all the connections are nice and tight. I found that the first time I did this, it didn't seem to pick up the camera, and just through turning everything off and reattaching it, it worked really well. You also need to check your camera settings. So if you're using the Sony range, make sure you're filming on manual mode. Now you have two options. You can let the camera decide what the image looks like, or you can let OBS do that for you. So the argument is you want the camera to do as little work as possible and put more of the work on your computer to help with the power issue. So that means turning off any picture profiles you might have set up. If you've got any effects on your camera, turning them off. If your sharpness is up, turning that down. And then redoing all of that in OBS, which is actually quite easy. You can add LUTs, you can add sharpness, you can play with the contrast, you can play with the saturation. Now, if you've got no idea what I'm just talking about, don't worry about that at all. Make it look pretty in the camera, how you want it to look, and don't worry about fiddling with it in OBS afterwards. I've always done it in my camera. The streams that I've been doing are about an hour long. If you're looking at 4 or 5 hour long streams, then maybe you want to think about having your computer do the hard work. There is an argument that says you will get slightly better quality doing all of that lifting work in OBS. But this is testing, so test it out. Now, if you think your internet is amazing, your computer is amazing, and you really want to stream in 4K, set the camera up to shoot in 4K. If you're not living in a complete dream world, then put it to 1080p and we'll try and maintain that quality. Also have a look at your frame rate. Now, if you're doing a gym workout and there's a lot of movement, you might want to set it to 60 frames per second. If you're just sitting here chatting like me, then there really is no need to have all that information flying into OBS, so set it to 25 or 30. In the Sony cameras, you need to make sure that your audio levels are set in camera first. So right now, using this mic, my audio level on the Sony is very low. It's about 8. So this is, again, going to be something that requires a bit of testing. You might notice that you don't actually hear anything in OBS when you connect everything up and it's working. Don't panic, just keep an eye on the animated channels. You want to make sure that your levels never go into the red part of it. Now, what I found with this Rode mic is I need to sit in the yellow, which is almost clipping each time, for it to be loud enough. If I maintain the volume in the green all the time, you tend to find that people have to watch the stream back on full volume on whatever device they're looking at. And that's not a problem, but they're not going to hear it necessarily if they've got other things going on in the background. And then of course, make sure that your display settings aren't appearing on OBS in the stream. All right, so now let's change some settings. So first click on settings, then select output, and then click on output mode and select advanced. This gives you new options. The first is streaming. Now this is the setting you're going to change a few times in your testing. It's called Rescale output. So let's start with 1920 by 1080 or full HD as you may know it. This is going to be the dream resolution, and if your setup can handle it, it will look awesome. Then select bitrate. But what does this mean? Well, put it simply, bitrate's the amount of information the camera records. So the higher the bitrate, you should have more information and better quality, but the more pressure it puts on your kit. YouTube recommends a bitrate of 2,500, which seems really low. So we're going to whack ours up to start off with to 5,000. The next section is recording. You can record and stream at the same time using OBS, which is pretty cool for marketing, as you can then cut out the best bits and repurpose them. It will of course mean that your computer needs a lot of space to store this video on, especially if it's a long stream. So if you've got one of the modern day laptops that seem to want you to put everything in the cloud on external drives, then make sure you've got an external drive capturing that information. Now select audio. Again, something to test, but I've set ours to 128. Okay, so that's the basics of the setup. You can spend forever testing this, but let's move on. So now we're rocking and rolling. You can, if you like, set up another camera to create another angle. You can set up OBS as a source to show your screen. You can add images, you can add all sorts of different things that you can then flick between in the studio, like they would in television when they cut between different cameras. That's what OBS allows you to do on the live stream. Let's just keep it basic for now with one camera. So let's hop over to YouTube. First thing you need to do is to go live. Now, when you click live, you're not going to go live straight away, so don't panic about that. It's just going to create the event itself. So let's name our first event 1080p with a bitrate of 5,000, audio 128. A really creative name that. You can keep it unlisted for now or private. Select that it isn't for kids if it isn't, and then hit create stream. Down the bottom, you might notice these latency settings. They're basically delays. So normal is the most delayed. I tend to find that when I stream, the delay between filming on the live set and actually what you see on YouTube is about 30 to 40 seconds. Now, this doesn't matter if you're not that bothered about chat and the speed in which you reply to questions. If it's a Q&A, you're going to want to change your latency. So you need to drop it to low or extra low. And this will mean that the quality may suffer, but there'll be no lag. You can chat to people quickly. It's something you want to test again. Now copy the stream key that's all blurred out and go to OBS, then settings, then stream, and paste it into the gap. Oh, and make sure you change your service section to YouTube and hit save. Again, don't worry, you're not live on YouTube. Now is the moment of truth. You want to click start stream, but this won't send you live on YouTube still. If you go to the YouTube event, OBS and YouTube will start to connect and you'll see it doing its thing. Now, it may take 10 or 15 seconds until finally you should see what your camera is showing. You've then also got some settings to look at. It will tell you the quality of your stream. Hopefully, it will say excellent. You can also look at your stream health. Now, this will give you pointers as to how to improve it. So, because we're streaming at a bitrate of 5,000, it's probably going to tell us to reduce that and that it recommends a lower bitrate. But don't worry about that for now. And that's it. Now hit go live. It will take a few seconds and you're off. So as you're going live to nobody, do a few more tests. Speak louder, speak quieter, check you like the lighting, the quality's doing well, and for about 30 seconds, ramble on at the camera. Once you've finished, you can end your live stream. You can do that first by stopping the stream in OBS and then stopping it in YouTube. You can go over to your YouTube studio now, search out your video. You might not see it straight away. You need to click on live rather than videos that you have, and you should find it sitting there. And this is where you watch it back. Check for lag, check for quality, check what it's streaming in, and have a think. Now, we would recommend reducing your quality from 1080p to 720. What we tend to find is, as I mentioned earlier, so you don't want that lag, so you need to sacrifice a little bit of quality. If it's not the best, go back and drop your bitrate. I recommend to about 3,000 and try again. Then if this isn't ideal, go and drop everything to 720p, so go to settings, and then select 1280 by 720 and try again, and then play with bringing the bitrate up and down. We'd not recommend going below 720p. this will make your image too poor quality. The final thing to keep an eye on whilst you're streaming and whilst you're setting up is in OBS, and that's actually how much processing power your computer's using. So in the bottom right corner, there's a CPU indication, and that will show you how hard your computer's working. I tend to find mine's always at about 25 to 30%. If it starts to creep up really high, you're gonna notice some problems. If it goes above 60%, you may need a new computer or to find a way to make sure that there's nothing else running to reduce that CPU load. Our final bit of advice, now you've got everything set up looking good, is to make sure you spend some time on your background. Now, this doesn't have to be an amazing set. I'm currently sitting in front of a blue wall with some items on a desk, which I've just set up for this stream. You don't want to make sure your shot is too cluttered, so I've got a few props in here, little camera, little lens, and then some flowers just to give it a bit of colour. A lot of people will use a computer behind them, but you don't want to make sure it's distracting, so items need to be carefully placed. So there's your sort of 3 or 4 hours of testing. If you do all of these things, I promise you, when you go live, it will be so much more stress-free. There'll still be a little bit of stress because it's terrifying going live. So if you'd like to learn a little bit more about lighting and making your backgrounds and your content pop, then watch this video here. If you'd like to learn more about presenting to camera so that you can perform on a live, then this playlist is here for you. And subscribe, because I just spent ages giving you all this information. It'd be rude not to. Oh, and like, I'm greedy.